Hi everybody, what's up? Here we go.
Hola.
I'll give it a few minutes because people will get ads. Hi everybody through ads. What do you mean is there no show tonight? It's 8 o'clock. I started the stream at 8.
It's time to play the music.
There's time to light the lights. It's time to get things started on the Misdirected Mark show tonight. Let's show me syllables. We're on MMP tonight. There we go. Alright, here we go. By the way, before we start, this show not really brought to us by Oreos, but Oreo Thins Pistachio. They're delicious. And they go great with Tim Hortons coffee. Here we go. 5, 4, 3. What was that?
Silence your phone.
I thought I did.
All right, here we go. Let's try that again. 5, 4.
This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Hey, Phil, what part of our topic on leading questions do you want to talk about tonight?
I see what you did there. You asked me a leading question about leading questions.
I, in fact, did. But who should we get to help us host the show tonight?
I think the better question you want to ask is, what is it? What depraved thing is Bob doing tonight that he can't be here on the show?
Is that really a leading question? No, I don't think that's
a leading question. What depraved thing is Bob doing here on the so that he's not on the show tonight?
I suppose that's true. Do we really think Bob does depraved things?
I mean, it's funnier when we use it as a leading question, because now what would be depraved for Bob?
Eating vanilla ice cream with sprinkles.
Right.
You got one? Yeah, Jerry?
I did that today.
Yeah, but that's depraved for Bob because Bob is so vanilla.
He's making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Oh, that's very good. That's very good.
That's like no one. He's like in a darkened kitchen, like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich really slowly.
Yeah. And with that, I will say welcome to the 370th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast, where we're going to be asking a number of leading questions. My name is Chris.
My name is Phil.
My name is Jerry.
Yeah, that's right. Jerry's here because Bob is not here because Bob is actually, we know what Bob's actually doing. Bob is taking care of a dog.
Okay, but you didn't have to say. You could have just let people. You could have just let people guess.
We don't defame or slander or.
Could have just let them guess. That's all. That's all I'm saying.
Do we not tell people what Bob's actually up to? They would have worried.
Well, he's okay.
Bob is okay. That's all I'm saying. Just saying. Okay.
He's fine.
Let's move on to one thing. So, Phil, what is your one thing? By the way, one thing is we talk about one thing we did this past week in gaming or our lives. That is pretty neat.
I did my session 0 for my Continental campaign. So this is the operators game set in the John Wick universe. So we set our game in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Mm-hmm. And we kind of made up our own Continental hotel and its manager, as well as we kind of made up the handful of members of the high table. Like, they're not actually high table chair holders, but like they're like the lieutenants of their interests are like key players in Sao Paulo. And then we defined our character, like they made their characters. So it's interesting. Sao Paulo is a super interesting city. It's a super interesting city. I did a bunch of research before doing the session 0.
It's got the most helicopters?
Most helicopters, because it has one of the worst traffic. Traffic problems in the world. So
well, that's weird.
Well, no, that's how it got the most helicopters.
That makes sense. It's a reaction.
But it's also the largest population of Japanese people outside of Japan. And it has a huge Brazilian-Italian community. So you have you can very easily go get like an Italian pizza, traditional Brazilian food, and sushi, like all authentic, like all in the within the city. I mean, not that other cities aren't diverse, but there is actually like a very large population of both Italian and Japanese in Sao Paulo, which I find fascinating.
That is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, and then it's got like there's so many other things about the city. I'm not going to go on about it, but anyway, we did the session 0. It was really cool. I'm pretty sure I know who the villain is. We made up the 3, like the lieutenants of like 3 of the high table members, and just the one of them that we came up with was so bad that I don't see how the characters before the end of this campaign won't kill her. Like, I don't see how it's going to be possible. Like, it's a bad character. So, anyway, it went really well. I'm flying by the seat of my pants on this because there's so little John Wick canon. Like, I'm having to infer a lot of stuff, but I feel like it went okay. Like, I feel like we're ready. We're gonna try it out. Try the system out. This will be my first time running operators, and I'm literally just making this up as I go along. But it's kind of fun.
I was thumbs upping to the camera because Bob said he fixed the show title.
Yes, and he also acknowledged that NPC is terrible.
Yeah, he also said he was making peanut butter jelly and banana.
Correct.
That's very depraved.
Yeah, jeez, Bob.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah,
I can't wait to hear how the mechanic goes with the cards.
I'm very interested in actually putting this thing on the table and trying it out.
Then we'll talk more about it at a later date.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Operators by
Kyle
and Fraser, right? Both of them.
I don't know if they both wrote it, but it's Kyle
Simmons.
Yeah.
Simons.
Kyle Simons. But yeah, looking good.
What about you, Jerry?
Got to play week 2 of Danielle Thomas's Deadlands Noir game.
Yeah.
It was very, very good. That's Major Kyla in the chat room, and we had a really good time as our characters did our best to not make too many enemies and deal with basically a Deadlands Noir style Jack the Ripper type in the middle of a mafia situation. And we kind of dragged our feet a little bit because he was trying to kill the mafia boss, and we decided that if we moved just slowly enough, we could change the balance of power in New Orleans and put somebody in power that we liked. So things are getting interesting because our characters are mostly good guys, but we've all got a little bit of darkness, as you will, in Deadlands Noir. But Danielle's running a really good game, and we had a good time. Burned through a ton of bennies. It was a good time. So,
Anybody want to ask me?
Of course, Chris.
I mean,
what did you do?
What did I do? So I played Raiders of the North Sea, a board game. It's a worker placement board game at Gathering Game. We go there pretty much every week, at least these days. Yeah, it's great. So Raiders of the North Sea, you are Vikings that are raiding into like Rome and things like that. And the fascinating tech for the game is that there's like a spot for the village where you play, like you place your workers,
Okay.
but you always have a worker in your hand. And when you play a worker and you get the action, then you pull a different worker off and you get that action too.
Interesting.
And that makes the game very fascinating in a number of ways. It's got a bunch of the other worker placement stuff, but
So you got a place to get an action, but you also get one when you take one away.
yeah, and your turn is you place to get an action, then you pull off to get an action.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes placing an act, it's like so strategically you got to think about who you want to take off the table, because do they hold that spot while they're still there? Like do you have multiple
No,
workers?
so
like,
everybody's using the same kind of workers.
okay.
So like there are 3 different classes of Viking worker. There's a black one, a gray one, and a white one, and you can get those as you raid, because the raiding rules are exactly the same. Actually, you place a worker in the spot that you're going to raid. When you can raid there's like requirements to raid up there, and then you take all the resources from there, and you get some amount of victory points, and you take a Viking worker, which is usually a different color worker. And those workers actually open up different spots in the village.
Oh, neat. Okay.
So then the game evolves over the course
So
of
you
time.
open up additional capabilities.
But we all start with a black Viking worker. So like when I put a black Viking worker down, I take a black Viking worker off. Then you would put a black Viking worker down and take a black Viking
So there's like a
worker
net
off.
zero on the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, that's how it works. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. It's tons of fun.
I love worker placement games.
Me too. It's one of the best ones I've ever played,
Wow.
and that's saying something.
I mean that's cool, because I mean my other favorite worker placement games are Waterdeep and the Manhattan Project.
Yeah, I like the Manhattan Project a lot. I enjoy Waterdeep still. It is just not, because it's so old now.
Yeah, and Waterdeep's not a complicated worker placement. It's a pretty straight, like it's I think almost one of the best. Like, hey, you want to learn how to play a worker placement game? Like, this is the game you should play.
So the ones that I've started to enjoy are the ones where everyone's going to place their workers beforehand, and sometimes there's a battle for it. And then after you've all placed your workers, then you run through the process of activating your workers because there's an order to it. Like, I like those ones a lot too, but this one doesn't have that, and I still think it's great. Like, so that place of one pulling off is amazing.
Cool.
There's a lot of it's a really simple game to play, and it's got a lot of deep strategy to it.
That's kind of the best games.
And it's different every time because the way that you distribute the resources on the board for where as you're raiding these places, there's like a number on the board for every settlement that every place that you're going to raid, but you figure that out at the beginning by randomly pulling them out of bags. So it actually changes the strategy depending on how that stuff kind of gets played out. And the Viking workers that you have, the Viking people that you have on your ship, because you have to have Vikings to go raid. You can only have up to 5, so you have a minimum size of your crew. So how those cards come to you and then how you play them also changes how you will play the game.
Fascinating.
It's an interesting game. There's multiple paths to victory. There's different ways to play it.
Mo said that he did a review of that.
He did.
If you go to tabletopbellhop.com, you can look up a full in-depth review on this as well.
Ding.
So yeah, that's good. Let's do some announcements, but first let's do an ad.
Yeah.
For Command Droids.
Not one that we prepared.
This isn't going to be bespoke. This is going to be
professional.
This is professional. Yeah, here, check it out.
Nerdy City flipped our world upside down and made things stranger with their nostalgic suburban horror game, Remembrance. Then, they made our skin crawl with a game based on the videos so gross and disturbing they were termed nasty with their horrifying tabletop, RPG Nasty. Now they send us back to the Saturday morning cartoons and brightly painted plastic toys we remember from our childhood that were more than met the eye. Commandroids, the first installment of the Radical Shadows universe, puts you in the driver's seat of your very own transforming robot. With a Kickstarter launching in the beginning of August, you can live out the battles between the heroic Symbitrons and the dastardly Nemesites in a world transformed. To be part of this Kickstarter and contribute, please search for Commandroids on Kickstarter or visit nerdycity.com for more information.
Yeah.
Man, it's such a good ad.
Right?
Well,
it's good.
The Nemesoids or whatever, it's so good. Like, it's so Transformers.
I mean, it's totally Transformers. But, I mean, why wouldn't that be a problem?
It's not. When I watched the Kickstarter video for it, it is actually, like, they took clips from, like, commercials and things like that of, like, Transformers. Like, I don't know if that's quite legal, but I don't care. I think it's great.
The edge on that one.
There was a moment where it was from the Transformers movie, I think.
Ooh.
Which that movie is... By the way, if you were
ever... the murdering one?
Yeah, the one where everybody dies. I don't mean like the modern one. I'm talking about the cartoon movie from the 80s. Where, like, well, we need to make new toys, so we're just going to kill all the Transformers in the Transformer movie. Like, I think they killed Jazz in, like, the first 5 minutes of that film.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you had a favorite Transformer from the TV series, you probably didn't have them after the first few
you
minutes.
didn't, because they even killed Optimus Prime. Because Rodimus Prime? All right. I mean, I didn't even really know who Rodimus was. Hot Rod was really. Like,
I was not okay after that movie. Like, I was a little.
A lot of people weren't.
I was a little messed up after.
Some people
that movie.
got their dreams and hopes crushed. But if you never want that to happen to you, then you should probably go back this game because you can never have that. You can control that, so it'll never happen.
Exactly.
Or you can crush all your players' dreams and you can kill all their Transformers or whatever they're called in that game. I forgot the name.
Run a big campaign, then stop it.
Synthezoids?
Say you're starting it up.
Huh?
Synthezoids, I think?
Synthezoids and Nemicons or something like that?
I
think it was Nemicons. That's a really good name, by the way. Nemicons instead of Decepticons.
It also sounds like a candy, so it's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. And do we have any other announcements?
Do we have any other announcements?
Go to the forums.
Forums.
We have a contest.
Yep. So
there's a topic in the forums that is like introduce yourself.
Mm-hmm.
When that topic has hit 100 people,
we're gonna start giving some shit away.
Yeah, 100 people that aren't us.
Yeah.
That aren't like people who host on shows.
Yeah, you can't be a host.
Can't be a host. Can't be a Misdirected Mark host.
Right. Any number of times.
Correct, because some of us are 2, some of us are 3.
Right.
Some of us are too many.
Yes. Yeah. So please go check out the forums. Please, if you are still interested, we're still doing the thing where we are backing the IGDN Metatopia Scholarship. We got a thing of that on the forums and on our homepage about details about that. But people who donate and let us know that they're donating, we're doing matching funds up to $250. And we're going to give some stuff away, like to the person who donates the most money.
And people who just donate are getting like coupons and
people.
stuff.
And if you just, if you're not the person who donates
If you
the most
donate
money,
$1,
you're getting some coupons.
yeah. So I mean, if you're ever thinking about buying it, like any of these books that we like to put out there,
Yeah.
like give us $1.
And if you're into supporting new game designers, potentially your next favorite game is going to come from one of these people. So by all means, get them there so that they can have that experience. Cool. Rolling on.
We good?
I think we're good.
Ready for this?
Wait,
I mean, don't tell me you're good if you're not good for this.
I always forget. Like when you mean good, you mean like you're about to kick into the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Hang on.
Why do we keep getting that? We get a mic pop.
Buzzy.
Probably mine. Probably.
No. Never touch that thing.
It's mine.
It's totally yours.
When I turn my head like this, it
Okay.
Just unclip and reclip. That's all. So that I think it might be that fold that's kicking on it, or it might just be that cord.
I can try that.
Totally possibly that cord. See if, just stick it on the table.
Yep,
It's
that's
fine,
what
Jerry.
we're gonna do.
By the way, sorry for these technical difficulties. We do this stuff. It's hilarious.
There we
We're
go.
working out the labs, man.
That's a lot
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, it's
Sounds a lot
totally
better.
a lot better.
Can you
All
guys
right,
still
here
hear
we.
me? Good.
Yeah. See, everybody's like mute him.
I could have, I suppose.
I
should
know. We
have.
really got to practice that because Bob does it too.
It's the funny thing. They're all like, ow, ow, ow. I'm also listening to it, and it's not killing my ear.
It must translate differently.
It must translate differently.
Bob's out there. He'll know.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Yep.
Workshop! Leading questions! Ask that question to steer your game! Workshop! Use those questions to get stuff to run the game better! Farm your players!
There we go. We were really loud.
Ooh, I locked up for a second. I lost a word.
I know.
Yeah.
Did you lost a word?
I did. I'm okay, but I panicked for a second how to get to the ending on that.
All right. So this one is somewhat inspired by For the Queen and just from our own interests. Tonight we're going to talk about leading questions. I mean, if you didn't get that from the intro.
I feel like we got through that.
This is by far one of the most useful tools that you will have in your GMing toolkit. And tonight we're going to look at just what it is, how to use them in your games as both a player and a GM, and how to talk about how they can be designed into games as well. But to get that off, we first have to toss a coffee-flavored piece of bamboo over to Phil.
Right. Just
I don't know how I read this stuff without screwing it up. Because I hadn't read it yet.
what you call it? Thank you, Ron Burgundy, for just reading straight through that text.
I mean, I was kind of scanning ahead to make sure I wasn't going to say something terribly embarrassing or anything like that.
Good to know. Good to know. I hope I didn't speak too much by saying it's one of the most useful tools that you could have as a GM. I feel like that is your feelings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't think I was wrong when I put that in the text. Okay. But yeah, let's talk about leading questions, right? Leading questions, questions that prompt and elicit specific, or shall we say narrow, responses based on the way in which they are asked. Let me give you a couple of examples.
I would love an example.
By asking each of you a leading question.
Do you want us to answer them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Okay.
we're just a little improv here. Chris, and I'm referring to your character at this point, right? For whatever game we're playing. Why are you not allowed back at the Red Claw Inn anymore?
Well, Dario may have insulted the barkeep there when he came on to the barkeep who he thought was, of the similar persuasion, but he wasn't as interested in me as I was in him.
Cool. Excellent. Jerry, different game, different situation. What did your character do during the art heist that makes you wanted by Interpol?
Klaus set fire to several art exhibits to keep the guards tied up trying to put the flares out so we could make off with everything else, causing millions of dollars of damage.
Wow. Klaus is an asshole. I'm not X-carding that, but I got some feels about
I quit a game because of that once.
I get some
I
feels about
legitimately quit a game because somebody burned down an art building one time.
I remember that.
I almost burnt down the Louvre last month in Rippers, so...
You're a jerk.
Let me rephrase that. I almost let the Louvre burn down.
Oh, well, that's a little
different.
Okay.
Did you start the fire?
No.
But
do you have a good opportunity to put out the fire?
Yes, but I had a better opportunity to try to stop somebody from unleashing Cthulhu things. So
that's fair, because the Louvre would be gone anyway then.
Get in there fast enough. It's always burning. The world's been turning. Never mind.
You don't know what that's from.
Bob's with me. Where's Bob?
I try to avoid Billy Joel references whenever possible.
Thank you.
Is
Please,
it,
Jerry's.
we didn't set the fire?
Yeah. Anyway,
It's like his one good song. So.
okay. Let me back up. Okay,
We didn't start the fire.
going back to those examples.
Bob's got you, by the way.
Thank you. Going back to those examples, what we see is that the way the question's worded, we're looking for a specific type of answer, right? And in contrast that to a more open style question where we ask a question but with a very broad or non-constrained wording, right? So let me give you the open version of that question, and we'll see we can see some of the differences. Chris, tell me about a time you were at the Red Claw Inn.
So I went there and had some beers with my friends. It was great.
Yeah. Okay.
The bard was kind of spoony.
Right. Good. Thank you. Perfect.
I knew that's what you were looking for.
Yep. Jerry, tell me why you might be wanted by Interpol.
I'm a thief.
Great. Okay. So see, in those cases, we left lots of options open for answers, but that's kind of part of the problem, as we're going to talk about as we get into this a little further, is that we kind of left it a little too open, and it wasn't as useful as opposed to the first set of questions, right? I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
So should we break it down?
Yeah.
now?
So what's going on in a leading question? We can actually break a leading question apart into some pieces.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing is pick a subject.
Yep.
Which is better than an object.
Yep. Thank you.
That's fine. So a barmaid, a prince, a place, like the Red Claw Inn.
Yep.
Interpol, an organization.
It's a noun. It's a person, place, or thing.
Yes. Or a group of people.
Uh-huh.
Decide what you need from the answer. Do you want information? Do you want the status of a relationship? Do you want a historical fact? Do you want to... Yeah, there. That's actually good. That's a good list, actually. I can't think of anything else to add to it.
Yeah.
And then pick a slant you were looking for. Scandalous, happy, fearful, problematic, troublesome, happy. Pick an adjective.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So if we go back to that first question that I asked Chris, our subject was the Red Claw Inn. Our the need, right, that we wanted. The need was
the information that you wanted was about a relationship status.
Yep. And the slant that we took on it was we wanted something that was problematic.
Correct.
Right? Because I specifically asked you about a time you got kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, now that we have these leading questions, we should probably figure out what they do, right?
Yes.
All right. So leading questions, they are designed to elicit specific types of information. They are there to lead the answer by using constraining language to narrow the larger possible answers into a more specific type of answer. This brings up the idea of being creative with constraints. So, a space that we think has several advantages. So creativity and originality increases. Right?
Yeah, right. Which is good because it forces you out of comfort zones, right? Our thing, especially if you're improvising, especially if you're on the fly, you're going really quickly, you will always fall to your comfort zone first because it's the place where your brain shifts to immediately.
Yeah, can I stick another one on here too?
Yeah, of course.
I think it makes it easier to answer the question.
I do too. I think that's.
You have the speed of answer can sometimes be faster.
Yeah, so along the same lines, right?
Yeah, the idea is you can answer quicker, but also you've narrowed the focus down so much that there's not as many possibilities. And anybody who's any kind of creative understands if you have infinite possibilities, then you don't know what the heck to do. As soon as you put 3 or 4, or two or 3, or even just one constraint on a thing, it's way easier to answer the question.
Yep.
And still be creative. And then the usefulness of the answer increases dramatically.
Again, because we've narrowed that constraint.
Well, you could see it just from the example questions, right?
Yeah, those first questions, if I was GMing something, I could totally use, right? Right off the table.
The second questions, you'd have to ask 3 more questions.
Yeah, your second question didn't even give me anything to go with, right? And,
well, I had some friends and there was a spoony bard.
Right. Yeah, and then Jerry's was because I'm a thief. Well, now I got to go ask you 10 more questions about that, right? But people do that. I certainly have done that when I was younger, right? So that's the cool part, right? Is how the leading question kind of narrows things,
mm-hmm.
right?
Now, question came from the chat room, which is, what do you do when the player answers the question in a contradictory manner?
Yeah, so that is part of being a good player.
Mhm.
Now, if you think, all right, so here's the juggling part, right? If you think that question kind of goes against your character, right, then it's up to you to kind of to speak up. So like if I was like Chris, like what part of the art museum did you set on fire?
And I would be like, I didn't set the art museum on
Right,
fire.
because then we have a disconnect, right? Like I'm trying to steer your character into something that wasn't the case, right?
Yeah.
So part of it is on the GM knowing, right? Like knowing what the character would, like potentially would or wouldn't do. And part of it is on the player, like you can just at a meta level be like, whoa, like I don't think that's a thing my character would do, right? So then I might rephrase the question and be like, cool, maybe you didn't do it. Why do people think you lit the art museum on fire?
Oh, see, that's yeah.
Yeah, like so you can as a GM reframe a question if it doesn't fit properly, and as a player, I think it's more important to just say like this question doesn't fit than to be snarky and just try to subvert the question. We're not in a power struggle. We're trying to work together here.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a collaborative effort, not a
Exactly.
power struggle. If you have a player that's going to engage in the power struggle at your table, then you have a different problem.
Yes.
That can't be really solved by the leading question thing. But the reframing the question is probably the best way to do it. Because it's really, that was how I was thinking too. Like when you said, how did your character start the art museum on fire? And I was like, I didn't start the art museum on fire because I wouldn't do that.
Right. And that's the thing where me as a GM would be like, oh, you know what, you're right. Like, you wouldn't do that. And if I knew that when I asked the question, then I'm being a dick. Right? Like if your character aspect is lover of art.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Chris, why did you burn down the museum? Like, I'm, like, as a GM, I'm being a jerk because I'm trying to use a leading question to steer you into a narrative that's not true for your character.
Correct.
But perception is always the way to get around that. Why do people think you did it? Because now we've got a story. Right? Because we know you wouldn't.
Well, I apparently have a rival who wanted to defame me in some way. shape, or
Yeah,
form.
now like we're off to the races now, right? Like
Now I have my good name to clear.
yeah, like welcome to campaign arc.
Yeah, that's way more interesting at that point.
Right.
And
So-
it's something I can sink my teeth into while enjoying that story, because it's like, well, somebody then I will have to still deal with the consequences of people thinking that I burned down the art museum. So the first thing to do is prove that I didn't burn down the art museum.
Exactly. So those kinds of questions, like especially if you're trying to, like, for instance, if my goal was I need to put you on the run, right? Because that's like my kind of goal for this session is to have you on the run. So perception is the way to do that without violating the character's beliefs.
Yeah. As players out there, by the way, if people ask you leading questions, you can question it. You can be like,
You totally can.
and because if you don't like what's going on, like you don't have to argue with the game master or the facilitator or whatever you want to call that person. You can just be like, what are you going for here, and how can I help get there?
Yeah. Yeah. So if I was like, oh, what I'm going for is I need you to be on the run.
Yeah, because and I'm like, oh, okay, well then, sure, we'll play that game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's assuming we didn't already discuss earlier. That's the kind of game we were going to be playing,
Right.
which is a thing that happens sometimes.
It totally happens, and it's totally so. These questions aren't ironclad.
Leading questions are really great for helping getting clarifying visions across the group. What were you going to say, Jerry?
You could also, well, in this case, if that's what you're trying to do, that's where you might want to start the question out with something better, like, you're on the run. Why do they think you set the place on fire? So now you're giving them a reason for what you're actually looking for.
You can lead with intent.
Yeah,
Yes.
lead with intent is a good way to give the players some idea what you're looking for.
Absolutely. And then it opens it up for the thing for like I was framed, and you're like, cool. Who do you think framed you?
And then I will give you 3 names,
Yeah, and let's
or
go.
I could even be like, I don't know. Do you have anybody?
Right.
Like, by the way, players, if you don't have the creative juice, you can look at the table, you can look at the facilitator, you can do all that
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely. Okay. So I think we're kind of entering into this. Was there any other questions?
There was one that kind of answered. That was Angie's question.
Cool.
And her answer was a little bit, which was, what Chris basically did, which is, who said that I did that? And I think we're getting into this next, but Avi wants to know, how do you prepare these interesting questions to ask the players? How do you know ahead of time what to look for, and what makes them interesting? How do you make them interesting?
So we kind of covered a little bit of that already, which is the you have a subject, you have what you need from that thing.
Yep.
And then you need the slant that you're looking for.
Yeah, and in our discussion, I think we're going to talk about our favorite uses for them.
And then eventually you'll need to tie those to the characters in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And this ongoing story. So whoever your movers and shakers are for your game, the ongoing tale that's being told, and your player characters, you have to figure out how those questions will connect players to story.
I often use leading questions for the whys in my game. So I might have the art museum burned down, but I'll use leading questions to find out why. You know, like, why did the art museum burn down, or why do people think you did it? I guess I use a lot of leading questions to fill in details. So prep wise, sometimes I do that in prep. Sometimes I'll be prepping a scene, and I might do. I did it for you guys for Shadow Sprawl. So I asked them a simple question, which was like, where do you guys operate out of? And they decided they operated out of this retro arcade called Flynn's, right? Which I was like,
sorry.
Right? So I was like, no, I love it, great. And then the leading question I asked him is, who here in this bar does more business here than you?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right? And actually it turned out really interesting, because I think by the time they came up with who it was, like Sean had a character, like a hook to like hang out with that character. But it was just like, I needed like a little extra detail.
Yeah, we're sort of into the why
I know,
are
I
helpful
want
to the GM,
yeah, let's,
which is fine. Like, let's just
let's dive.
Let's reframe the conversation real quick. We're talking about why these questions are helpful to the GM.
Absolutely.
What you're, that one right there, that's about world building.
Yep.
You're farming the table for information.
Absolutely. Right. So farming the table is actually one of those great things that that you can do. So this is a powerful tool, right? Because it does two things, right? It farms the table. And it constrains ideas into something that's going to fit for the game. So you just mentioned farming the table. So we know this thing is collaborative.
Get me for a second.
We're bad at hand gestures.
No, that was the wrong one. Sorry. Go ahead.
So,
Sorry.
so we know that collaboration is a powerful improv tool.
I know what this means now, though. By the way, this is a hand over the microphone.
You're gonna run your finger across his neck.
Yeah. Good Drax.
Thank you.
It's a good Guardians reference.
All right, so we know collaboration is a huge improv tool, right? Improv always is better when you're collaborating, and we know that when we let multiple people share ideas and combine them, that the result is always something cooler than something we would think about on our own, right? Because we're just adding more ideas. We're coming from places that that we're not, we're not comfortable in. And one of the things, and this is one of the reasons I love leading questions, is that this is one of those things that really keeps me on my toes as a GM. Because when I just throw out, like, why can't you go to the inn? Like, I now have to use that as a problem in the game. Like, how am I going to deal with that? Or what am I going to do when you walk into the inn, right? So they're really, like, they're fun things for a GM to do to stay on your toes. Because you don't know what the answer is going to come back as, and so you just got to work with it. And so the other thing that farming does is it creates player input.
It does.
And as we know, anytime players contribute something towards the details of the game, it heightens emotional investment.
Yeah, it's also an excellent tool. We'll get to that comment in a second. It's an excellent tool for players that are not super comfortable with creating things in games. This is a great tool to bring those players along, because you can really ask them very directed, poignant questions.
And often they can kind of figure out where the answer's going. If you've done it correctly.
I mean, you don't even. That's one of the cool things is maybe that answer goes that way, but it doesn't always have to be, right?
Right.
It can also give you some idea of your players' intents. If you ask them leading questions, even something as simple as you walk into a bar, there's a bunch of locals here, you recognize somebody else in the bar, who is it? If they describe a bunch of, like, no merchants with a bag of gold, that means they want to go buy something. If they talk about a bunch of surly toughs looking at them, well, that group wants to get into a rumble. It can tell you something about what the players want to do for that scene.
A little bit of love lettering.
Exactly.
Totally love lettering.
Thank you. That's the term. They give you some love lettering. But you got to remember, when you ask those questions, pay attention to the answers. So,
well, and that's part of. So, as we were saying about player input, what the thing that we know about creating emotional investment is that it's the callback, right? So you put that question out there, and somebody gives you a thing, like you need to reincorporate it now, and that's what completes that loop. Like it's a transaction, right? Chris gave me a thing about the Red Claw Inn. Now, when I make him have to go walk into it, and a hush falls over the bar, and the bartender like reaches down and pulls out a club and bangs it on the bar and goes, "Not in here!" Right? Like now we got some drama.
Yeah. There's a great comment. What if the players' answers are always items to boost their powers and not story elements? You know what? I love when people do that stuff because I give them the most double-edged things ever. Like, yeah, you could totally have this thing that does this, but it also does this.
Well, so the thing I would do to counter that would be like, awesome, yes, you have that powerful artifact. What terrible side effect occurs when you use that artifact? Like we can just play this game of chicken for a little while, right? Like if you're gonna give yourself
I don't even let them pick the power.
Oh, you just do it.
I always have the idea for it.
Yeah, I mean sometimes I'm all for like pick your poison. Like
yeah.
Like, oh, you want that powerful artifact? Cool. What terrible cost does it come with?
I love when the players complicate their own situations. Sometimes players like to create more complications for themselves with that. We had one in Star Wars where they were following a bunch of bounty hunters, and they finally got close enough to see them, and I asked one of our players, you recognize one of the bounty hunters. What do you know about them? And in character, he's like, why is my brother leading a group of bounty hunters?
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, he is.
Well, that's a whole story.
Somebody wants some family drama in that game.
Yep.
Let's get to work.
Yep.
Right. And then, of course, you have to have them meet. Like, you can't just let the players ambush and wipe out the bounty hunters.
Well, at that point, they don't ambush and wipe out the bounty hunters.
Right.
In fact, it's less likely that they ambush and wipe out the bounty hunters.
And if you really want to turn the screws, then you start asking leading questions like what fight did you and your brother have that caused him to run away from the house?
Oh, because now it's your fault.
Yes.
That's good.
Just get that knife. Once you get the knife inserted, like just keep twisting as you.
And if, as a player, if you don't like that leading question, you can be like, "How about this?" And then offer something else like, "I'm not the one that made him run away. I left early, and then my dad and my dad drove him away from home."
He will tell you that I made him leave, but really what happened was.
Not even that. Like you can just negotiate the backstory.
Yeah, you can negotiate your way out of it.
Yeah.
If you don't think that's where your character story would have gone, but sometimes people are like, oh yeah, totally, I made a huge mistake.
Because maybe you've been looking then you can like really take that to some interesting places and make some stuff up with it. Like I've been looking for my brother for a bunch of years now. Right. Like he's been gone. We thought he was dead.
Right.
I think that also goes back to the episode on layers, because a lot of the answers they're going to give you aren't just going to tell them what they want, but also tell them about what kind of experience they're looking to get out of the game. If they're looking for family drama or political drama.
Yeah, we're at the meta level then.
Yeah.
The story level.
Yeah, and we're definitely love lettering.
But all that comes out of the questions you ask and the answers they give.
Want to talk about constraining ideas?
Yeah, tell me about it.
All right, so we talk about constraining ideas all the time. Like, in fact, I mentioned it earlier.
Yep.
So, like, if you're the game master and you're tasked with guiding or facilitating this story, you might just not know what the next beat is, and leading questions really help with that.
Or the beat might not be that interesting.
That's true too.
Like the next beat is they got to go to the bar and get information from like the guy in the corner. Wah, wah. But you're like,
well, how do we spice this up?
Yeah, how are we gonna just toss a little?
What's the other thing we can mix with that investigation beat to make it a little bit spicier?
Yeah.
Since we've just had 2 investigation beats before that.
Yeah.
Which could be, oh yeah, that's the guy that has a bounty on his head, but you also need the information from him.
Yes, and it looks like it looks like Jet the bounty hunter is parking his his hover bike outside.
Oh my!
Right, clock's ticking.
Well, now it's a very different encounter. That's an investigation. That's probably
rescue.
That's probably an extraction investigation fight. There's a whole bunch of possibilities.
Or you bag Jet before you can get into or you mislead him.
So there's like a whole level like. So here's the thing about beats that we talk about beats all the time. Like you should have a bunch of different beats. When you drop a situation down that doesn't have a clear beat, that's also exciting for the players because they get to decide the next beat. And that will help them beat out the game. So they won't be doing the same thing over and over again. Or if they're doing the same thing over and over again, that's because they choose to.
Yeah, which means that they're enjoying it.
Yeah,
you know.
That's what they want.
Yeah, maybe they want to go beat up Jet.
Maybe
like
they do.
jump them and like throw them in the dumpster and then go talk to this guy. That's okay. Like we can do that.
And then if they kill Jet, then that might cause all sorts of other problems.
And Jet's partner's on the
Oh, that's not good.
right. You don't want Jet's partner.
No, you really don't.
Exactly.
We're talking about Cowboy Bebop.
Exactly.
He's gonna kill you all.
Right.
All right. So if you have a like this just giant open question,
Yeah.
there's no clue where this answer is going to go. So, I mean, you're just gonna be. It could do nothing.
Yeah, like
Mine and Cherry's answers did nothing.
Yeah, like they
on
just
purpose.
Yeah, they fell flat. Like and you'll get that. Like, listen, you will get that from a player if a player is tired, if they've had a rough day. Like if they're not feeling super creative to like feeling like, oh, I see what you're doing here. You asked me an open question, but I really need to give you something juicy to go with. And I'm kind of just like, hey man, I just want to roll dice and like pound on, I just want to like pound on giants for a little while. Like then I might just like give you like a blah answer. But if I'm tired and you hit me with a leading question, the narrowness of the question, it gives more of a chance that even in my lowered creative state, you're going to get something usable.
Well, remember these leading questions are prompts too.
Yeah.
Because you're giving. Let's go back to go back to it because I think it's worth saying a third time. So pick a subject. That's already information that you've gotten from the question. There's probably some sort of like situation that you were pushing on, because you're looking for information. So you're pushing on that situation. So like, tell me about a time you were at the Red Claw, and that's less of a thing. But this one, tell me about why you might be wanted by Interpol. Like that's different. Like you're wanted by Interpol. That is Interpol is the subject. Why are you wanted is like this bunch of leading information, a springboard for ideas, without being super constrained. But you can constrain it even harder if you want and get interesting information. But that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Because tell me about a time you were at the Red Claw. That means you frequent the Red Claw often.
Yep.
So it's just one time you frequented the Red Claw.
Yeah.
In my case, the last time I frequented the Red Claw, before I got kicked out, and now I have to go back.
Yeah. Of course you have to go back.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of being kicked out is because you're going to go back.
So the idea behind the leading question is also be a springboard for creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. So it helps when somebody's not feeling creative to be kind of prompted with one of those questions.
Absolutely. So let's see what's next. So
I feel like we've kind of
got it all.
I think
we good.
I mean, I think we're good on what a leading question is, right? We've plenty of examples. Talked about some usage of it. We're gonna dive into some more open discussion about them.
Can I talk about another show on the Misdirected Mark podcast then?
Network?
Do. The network?
There's another show on this show?
Sometimes. Other shows come out of this show sometimes. Like this one.
Like
Jang, you hustle!
Like when we leave, does like somebody else show up and just start the show like without us, and then like they just quick pack up and go before we get back?
That's weird.
It's Jim, Bridget, and Chess.
Yeah. Chess is on here. Meow. Meow, meow, meow.
It's podcast. It's podcasting with podcast.
Yeah.
I feel like people will watch that, actually. We might even have a larger audience for that than we do for our show. Wow.
People are like, oh man, the podcast humans showed back up.
I know, right? Jang, you hustle. So train alongside fellow stewards Eric Farmer and Eli Kurtz in Jang, you hustle. Eric and Eli make their kung fu stronger by watching wuxia films. Wuxia. Say it with me. Wuxia films, then discussing how to apply their observations to game design. That's Jang, you hustle. Which I still am on the intro to that because I say it's Jang, you hustle, and then there's music. I can't believe they haven't started like changing the intro.
They haven't just replaced you out
they haven't
yet?
replaced the intro yet.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Cool.
Is there anything in the chat room?
Yeah, we have one more good question, which is how can you use leading questions to make published modules more interactive?
Oh, because published modules don't ever involve the characters.
Right.
So find out, like, they're
Hook
like
them. Use them to hook them.
Yeah, use them to hook them. Use them to tie them into the material. Find the interesting stuff that is in the module, like as far as people and possible relationships, and then develop leading questions around that stuff, like your villain, your NPCs, things like that. Especially the subjects of the adventure themselves. Like, oh, if it's a treasure hunt, like, oh, what valuable bauble that your mother had that you really want is in the treasure hoard?
Which one of your family members died while trying to explore this dungeon?
Yeah, there you go. Right? Like,
Like,
that's good.
yeah, I mean, so absolutely, what you call it? Absolutely having using leading questions to tie people to published adventures.
Why do you want the Sapphire Star? Because what do you want to heal with it?
That's like your first question every time you run that adventure.
It is.
Or why are you here at the Airy Peaks?
Well, no, I usually have something more direct than that.
Yeah, like you're going into the Airy Peaks to get a thing.
I mean, when I run a campaign, sometimes I'll ask that open-ended question of why are you at the Airy Peaks?
Right.
We also have the comment that after we leave, the panda head comes to life.
Oh, that's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
I live here. I don't like that.
That's not cool.
It's not good. No bueno. No
I'm gonna
bueno.
X card Panda Head coming to life.
Ugh. I mean, it's good. It's funny. It's just creepy. So creepy. So creepy.
It's creepy.
It's creepy.
Totally creepy.
All right.
Coolness.
Anything else? We good?
Let's see. Yep, no, that was Blake's question. So, I think somebody just.
Yep, I think that might come later on. Well, let's ask it now. How often do we use leading questions in our games? Do we do it at the beginning of a new arc or sprinkle them throughout?
I use them all the time.
Yeah, I use them anytime. I use them pretty much anytime I'm feeling a little less creative, or if one of the triggers is always if this feels too generic, then I'm like, well, how can we spice this up? Or I want some background. Like I love backgrounds. Like if you introduced to me a new NPC, I'm definitely asking you a leading question about that NPC.
When yeah, because that's you just put work on me, so I'm just gonna put it back on you.
No, it's because I want something interesting.
Well, there's that too.
Like-
Also, something they're interested in.
Right.
I mean, they interest the NPC.
Yeah, but as soon as you give me something, well, because the leading question type I use is relationship status.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Jerry in our Shadow Sprawl game has a contact who's a high-end madam.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure I asked some leading question along the lines of when you introduce them. I think I asked like when did you last party with them or something like that, or like it was something along those lines. Like
Crystal Becks.
right, yes. Like we need to establish your relationship here.
Yes. The panda
And
head is
they want to know where it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I like them. I like them anytime you introduce something new, like a town. Because if we're arriving in a town, I almost always ask somebody why, like ask them a leading question about this town. Like, what have you heard about this town that disturbs you so much? Or my favorite Jason Cordova question ever was like, it was from one of the APs, one of the Dungeon World APs, and it was like, what about this town shows you how desperate the people have become during this war?
Mm-hmm. It's a good one.
And the answer was like, I forget what it was, but it was super chilling. Like it was like, oh, David nailed the answer to it, and you're just like, within a second, you were like, I know everything about this town now, and I'm super creeped out.
So
I like to use I like to use them at the beginning of every new story arc. If the players aren't like, if we break a game in the middle of like a dungeon crawl, rarely, then we don't do that. But at the start of any new story arc, start right off the bat by asking the players either the same leading question or a bunch of them to get them back into the story right off the bat. Why are you here? Who do you know? Well, why do all of you, how do all of you know Chris and what's your relationship with him? And that gives everybody motivations.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think there are too many places where leading questions don't work.
yeah, my favorite place to actually use them is, I don't know if it's my favorite. It's one of the ones I use it most often because I run a lot of action-oriented games. And strange enough, a leading question is like, well, you're fighting. What does it look like when you are fighting this thing that you're fighting?
Oh, yeah.
Or how did you kill this thing? Because that tells, when you're playing action-oriented combat games, that tells a lot about the character, and that gives a clearer picture to everybody else at the table what this character looks like in a fight, especially since you're doing a lot of fighting in those kind of games.
Right, which is really good to help create shared narrative.
Correct. The shared vision.
Yep. Cool. We should jump into our actual questions. Chris, do you want to ask our first question?
Yeah. As a GM, what is your favorite type of leading question, Jerry?
I like the ones that have the players create something new in the scene. Like, who do you know in the bar? What's there? Why do you know somebody? What do you remember from here? That kind of thing. Something that give the players a chance to create something in the world that they're going to relate to.
Yeah, nice.
Phil?
I like the ones that establish relationships. I want to know. I want to know and it's almost always. I don't want to say problematic, but I always want to know what the tension is in the relationship. Like every relationship has some level of tension, so I like tell me that thing.
Well, especially when it comes to dramatic stories, like they have to have it. Otherwise,
Yeah, you guys can be like the best of friends, but tell me like the last time, like
Well, you can even be just the best of friends because that means whenever one of you is in danger, the other one is going to want to be there for him. I mean, that creates its own level of tension because you're in a dangerous situation.
Right. Yep. So I love ones that establish character relationships. How about you, Chris?
I mean, I love ones that help create the shared narrative vision. Anything that helps define when I can't see it in my head or I don't think it's clear in my head, then anything that will help clarify it because that'll let it be clear for everybody. Those are actually my favorite kind of ones because it helps the narrative move along without being confusing for people. Since the majority of the games that I play are online,
Yeah.
and I don't like to use a camera, so I mostly just use words.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Our next question is, as a player, so not as a GM, as a player, how can you effectively use leading questions?
Oh, they help me find out stuff about players. That's actually my favorite way to use them as a player is like, and I try to do it actually in character, in game. Like, hey, what's up with your, hey, what happened to your car that we used to drive around in? Right? Like, where did it go? Like, that's a leading question and a half.
Absolutely.
Especially if I know you have a car on your character sheet and we haven't seen it yet.
Yep.
Like, those are the kind of things. Like, I try to know what people kind of have on their characters, what's important to them. And then if that stuff hasn't come up yet in game, I'll actually point it out. Because otherwise, why did you put it on your character sheet? I assume you want it to be there. Like, that's like a love lettering thing.
We talked about that. How about you, Jerry?
I like to use them as a player to bring out the quieter players. The player who doesn't get enough spotlight time. You can asking a leading question of them in character, like Chris does, gives them a chance to actually talk about their character and maybe tell you the whole table more about what's going on. We've all been at tables with that one player who is playing and having a good time, but they never get a chance to talk about their character because other people step over them. Or if you ask a leading question, it's good. Especially if you end up with a GM who does not use leading questions.
I will often use them to ask a player to define something about my character. Like, hey, when the last time when we went out to go on patrol, what's the thing I did that really annoyed you?
Really?
Yeah, because it's fun. Like, I want to see what that tension. Like, I always like the tension, right? Because you might be like, yeah, we were out on patrol, and like you would not stop talking. And so now I know, cool. That's a prompt I'm going to use in the game. When you and I are in character, I'm just going to start chatting to you like constantly and annoy you about it. Like, I like those things because like most times I'll just pick that up and be like, cool, that's part of my character now.
Yeah?
Yeah, like that's it. Like, yep, sure. We went out on patrol and the whole time I was just like, bip, 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 bip. Drove you crazy. And then I might ask you, like, did you tell me about it? Or did you just kind of suffer silently? Right? And now like we have a little more, now we have a little depth to our character and maybe we are like teamed up and we're really useful together, but like there's a thing that bugs you.
It's an interesting creations way to go about like helping to create elements for your character because
well, and then
getting outside input on, I feel like getting outside input on your own character, like I would do that. I think I've actually done that.
Not recommending it for everybody,
but yeah, that is. I feel like it's a thing that's often rare for players.
I think the thing I like about it is I want to have a little tension in our relationship, but I don't want to push it onto you, right? So like I don't want to be like, yeah, we went out on patrol, and the thing was like you never stopped talking, because now you're like you might become defensive about that. But if I turn it at me and let you prompt me about it, you're more willing to say something that we can work with.
Because you're letting them create
you're putting it on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if the tone of the game is light, like then it might be something really funny. But if we're playing like Band of Blades, like it might be something like all you ever do is talk about home. Like every time I go out on patrol with you, it makes me like super homesick. Right? But now I know, like next time we're in a scene together, I'm totally going to start talking about home. Right? If anything, just to push you to confront me on it in the game, because now we can have that dramatic moment where we have that dramatic moment where you know we're all of a sudden out of patrol and you're like, dude, you got to stop talking about home. And I'd be like, why? And then like we can have a whole scene about that before the GM jumps in with something. But I find if you let people put things on you that are difficult, they're more apt to do it because a lot of people defensively don't want to put anything like problematic on their character. So
We got a couple good questions here that might fit in right around here. One is, when do we want a more open-ended question, and when do we want a leading question that's more tightly defined? How do you decide which one is better?
open versus leading?
Yeah. Open versus more tightly defined.
I would say
Both leading. So go ahead.
my gut instinct is you ask a slightly more open question when you have something in mind and you're just looking for some additional details. I think open is always a risk. I think leading is almost always a better way than open, because open is so big that somebody's going to potentially trample on the thing you're crafting up. I don't know.
I think open's more for when you don't actually have any idea of where you're going.
Sure, but even then I want to ask. Then I want to lead it in a direction.
I'm going to assume
Sorry.
that the setting has been established in some way, shape, or form, or you are willing to, or the tone has been established, or some parameters have been established. Because otherwise, that is essentially a parameter establishing question.
I might use open like during a session 0 when I have no idea, like when the world's mostly a blank slate. I might be like, tell me something about the land you came from.
We'll talk about that a little later, actually.
I mean, yeah, those are good questions to ask if that's the kind of game that you want to play.
Yeah, like if I have no idea what we're doing with this game, like tell me something about the land you came from. You could be like, we have the largest libraries in the world. And I'll be like, okay.
And then just jot a note down.
Yeah, like see if we can work that in.
It's harder to do once you've started campaigning.
Yeah. I like them for session 0.
Yeah, as soon as you start campaigning, then maybe at the start of a new story arc you can do something, especially if you go to a new place. Like I said, I think open-ended questions are more for setting for like if you don't have a lot of your parameters set.
Right.
And like if you can really create whatever, then those are good places. Although you can ask those open-ended questions as long as you have parameters set in place, because then people can just create within the parameters of the open-ended question. Because those function as the constraints on the leading question then.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is odd about the kingdom of Britannia? And the odd part is basically, what works outside of the constraints that we've already set up, those parameters. So there you go. Like, I mean, that's. I mean, this is such a fascinating topic because
One of my favorites.
Well, because leading questions and even open-ended questions and whatnot, like as far as like role-playing games go, like role-playing games are shared narrative experiences. But they are also very useful for just storytelling and writing too, because I ask myself these questions.
Oh yeah.
Like constantly.
So sorry, go ahead.
When I'm telling stories. So this is a good storytelling technique. When you get stuck, you're like, just ask yourself a couple questions.
So are all leading questions loaded with assumptions automatically?
Yeah, because that's part of it. That's the lead, right? The lead is you're putting a few assumptions right on top of it, because I'm constraining you with those assumptions. Why do people think you burned down the art museum? We're not opening for debate whether or not people think you burned down the art museum. That part is the assumption. People think you burnt down the art museum. Why? Right? That's and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like it's they're great. Like I don't know. I love leading questions.
Yeah. We were actually talking about the difference when we were having that conversation before about having like built-in assumptions and whatnot. There is a difference between an open-ended question and a leading question. Like what you defined earlier is a leading question. Something like, tell me something interesting about the world is definitely an open-ended question.
Yeah. Actually, technically, tell me something about the world is an open question. Tell me something interesting. It's somewhat it's lightly constrained, right?
That's fairly constrained.
Because I could be like, there's a lot of beetles in my hometown.
Interesting, yeah. Interesting means very little, right? Like, except for the fact that fact is an interesting thing.
Right. I mean, how many XP to burn down the art museum? Oh God.
Now I'll tell you how many heat it was worth. It was worth 7.
Oh.
It was worth 7 heat.
Yeah.
That was a bad
night. That was a bad night for those of you who know Blades in the Dark.
Oh, that's a bad.
Did you hear that?
heist.
It was 7 heat. You know, that's almost 8. I think we got a wanted level off of that. It was terrible.
Wanted, a couple people got picked up and roughed up.
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were making a dad joke.
Yeah, who's rustling?
Because I wasn't really moving. Okay, here we go.
To answer Avi's question from earlier, where do you get the leading questions from? Ryan Macklin's backstory cards are amazing for getting started characters.
Yep.
Sure, you cut. You're not. No, it's still working. Never mind.
Can you guys hear me? I sound muted.
You do sound muted. No, it's working.
Oof.
Don't do that though.
Okay. I can't hear it.
Move it closer to your mouth.
Okay. Hello? Hello?
That's bizarre.
Okay. As long as you guys can hear
Let
me.
me see that.
Anyway.
There we go.
Yeah, keep talking.
Oh, there's some wire thing.
No, it turned off
Oh.
because the battery's dead.
There you go. Okay, cool. While we're swapping that out, I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question, and then I may take a few seconds to answer it while Chris is doing technical stuff and Jerry is without mic. As a GM, how do you find balance using leading questions versus just stating things and going on in the game? So, yeah, I am super hot right now. Hang on. I'm going to see what I can do. God, everything's gone wrong tonight. Lab failures. Okay, I'm just going to hold the lab for a second. Okay, see if that keeps me a little more level. All right, so the way that you find balance is that, at least the way I do it, is that I have things that I want to happen in the game. So there are certain beats that I want to happen. There are certain scenes or sets that I want things to take place. So those I don't... those I state and don't mess with. And then I use leading questions in places where I want a little more detail, or I want some player insight about them, those kinds of things. So I might establish a location like this is the Red Claw Inn, but then I might go ask some I might ask some leading questions about the Red Claw Inn, because I want to get some hooks from the players as we enter into that location. So, 1, there's a little static.
Move this over to
And
here.
2, I'm super hot right now.
There you go.
So anyway, it is a cry for help. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin recognizes I was trying to talk with one hand. It's awful. I need both hands.
You should be fine now.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this insertion quietly. There. Very quiet. Okay, cool. So yeah, I think what you do is you state things that you want to control in the game, and you use leading questions to fill in details and to create motivation and problems and complications and things like that. So if you make that inventory of the things that you want in the game, you can just put leading questions around those things.
I agree with all of the things that you just said for the last 5 minutes that I didn't hear.
Woof.
I don't know.
You know that time in Swords Without Master that you made me go 2 minutes straight explaining how I beat your character up with a dragon?
Yeah, that was
I
great.
feel like that was this moment.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Way to fill the dead air.
Thank you.
So it wasn't dead air.
I have what you call it? I have an expired FCC license. Like, I know about filling dead air.
Yeah.
I was a radio man back in the college days.
What question are we on?
We're technically on 3. So as a GM, how do you find balance between using leading questions and just stating stuff that you want?
I tend to often just state stuff that I want until I can't think of something.
Yeah, leading questions are great when you're like, I don't know what's going to happen.
I also do that until I see somebody that hasn't been participating for a while. Then I will ask them a leading question. It's very effective at getting people to talk.
Yep, that's cool.
Because it's not open-ended, so they don't have to go, although some people still do. That's okay. Then you can always just even narrow it down farther if you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. You can totally you can keep narrowing it.
So that's really the balance. Like I am somewhere between. I mean, I like telling stories, so like I will just talk and talk and talk and talk. But like I usually like to get the character's perspective when they do a thing. That's a thing that I care about.
Oh, here's a good leading question we didn't talk about before when we talk about favorite leading questions. The other one that I always like is, how is it possible you failed this role? Like, you're super competent. What actually went wrong that made this not work?
I often get the thing when somebody flubs a roll, and they're like, oh, and then I'm like, I will scramble to come up with something that makes them look like it wasn't their fault.
Yeah.
Like it was just bad luck or something with the environment or something like that. But yeah, asking them to describe that, like what happened.
Yeah, like how is it possible somebody as competent as you, what is it that you didn't expect to have happen? I'll give a quick example of using leading questions to start off a game. So there's a Hydra Hacker adventure that I have called Busted Maine, and it's about this vegetable co-op that the Hydra Hackers previously built for the neighborhood, and the pipe blows out. And so when the game starts, the design of the adventure is you're going to have to do a handful of things in order to get the co-op up and running again. And I don't know. I don't exactly know. I know what the things are, but I don't know what the potential complications are going to be around them. So I have a set of leading questions that go back to when the co-op was first built. And I ask the players, I ask the plumber and the hydrologist, what interesting thing did you have to do to this system to get it to work? Right? And that gives me some mechanical things that they're going to have to deal with. And the last one is always the same thing. The hacker, I always say the hacker, you had to write some custom code so that the water authority wouldn't realize that you're siphoning out all the water at the beginning of the month. What close encounter did you have online? How did this almost not work? And so then I get something like, oh, a security sweep almost caught me, or there was another hacker in the system, or whatever. But the answers to those questions almost always become part of the opposition for the game. Because I don't really know what this next couple, what the following scenes are going to be, but I let those things come in and be like, I think in one game somebody was like, oh, we had a really tough time finding water filters. And I was like, okay. And then the next question was who was really helpful in the neighborhood? And they were like, oh, this Russian mobster. And I was like, okay. And immediately piece that together for them, for a scene. So that's a great way to kind of take the stuff that you have set and pull in those leading questions. Cool. I think we've beaten this one to death. And is everything settled now and electronically?
As settled as it's going to be.
Okay, good. All right. Then let's just do the last question. Does anyone else have any other things to chime in on 3? Because we didn't really roundtable it. I was kind of filling dead air.
I think it's the same thing. I think that you basically...
I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you answered the whole thing.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Question 4. As game designers, where can you use leading questions in your mechanics?
In adventures, it's part of the setup. Actually, one of the best and best-selling AL adventures I ever wrote, that wasn't the one that was for one of the D&D seasons, has 4 leading questions at the beginning of it for the characters, and people love them.
Yeah, well, people,
because it ties them right into the adventure.
Again, see, it's that connection.
Yep. So that as a game designer, you put them at the front to help hook the players in.
Yeah.
In your adventures, I don't for campaign stuff, for game stuff, or actual setting up your campaign type stuff. I'm not. I know there's ways to do it. Depends on the focus of the game.
For instance,
really.
bonds.
Bonds are.
I mean, Dungeon World bonds are leading questions. They're leading statements.
They're just
not
statements, right?
But they're leading. So and so is unfit to be in the dungeons.
Yeah.
I will have to save them.
Yes. Then the idea is to ask a question after that.
Right.
Say
why do you think that?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to say why, but why do you think that? Well, I don't know. The bard's always getting high and playing music. I just assume they're going to get killed one day. They're not taking this seriously enough. Right. And then you look at the bard, and the bard's like, it's true.
Or the bard could be like, I don't really think that's accurate.
Well, and it's fair to be that's what they may think, but actually, I'm actually really paying attention. I just seem super casual.
I think that's actually what solved one of the problems with the one system game I was running. I had a scenario where I had trouble with players working together and doing the right thing, and it was Glenn Seiler who told me I should start the game with a bunch of leading questions just to generate why the players were A, all together, and B, interested in the scenario.
Yeah.
And putting it right in from the get-go, building the characters. You guys are all together, why and so on, made it more leading questions than that. I don't want to go on forever. But it made a big difference in starting the game out with a group of people who had a reason to be together more than just you're sitting at the same table. Mm-hmm. That's really important. There's a lot of games I've run and played in where you realize if we weren't all friends at the table, there is no reason these six characters would be on more than one mission together. So
a lot of leading questions in game design stuff that I've seen is about giving some sort of focus or purpose to the characters of the players, or some sort of relationship connection to the players for the characters. For instance, in Scum and Villainy, your ship has a thing that they are trying to accomplish. Like, they might be ambitious. So that's actually like a leading question. It's like, what is your focus?
Yep.
Like,
what's the way you do things?
Yeah, or the thing that you want to be known by. Mm-hmm. Like, your crew is what? And when you say ambitious, that has some weight to it. I forget if Blade says anything like that.
Yeah, Blade says the thing about like what your gang is known for.
Yeah, so they're
like loyal, there's that. Daring. Yeah.
So that's pretty much as far as design goes. I can't think of any other places in design.
The only time we did it was I ran a whole campaign for about a year and a half that Mage Danielle was in with us, where we literally leading questioned the entire campaign until the game started. We came up with, what kind of characters do you want? How do they know each other? Tell me something about the races of the world. Tell us something about the politics of the world. Why doesn't this... And the entire campaign, with the exception of no Drow, no Kender, was whatever the players wanted, but we had to put it in question-answer form that people could interact with it instead of just being yes-no questions. And it was tough to run a campaign that way because it wasn't very intelligently put together, but it was... Or logically put together. Intelligently it was. But as a design, it was fun to try, and everybody got to do the thing they always wanted to do because they could build whatever character they wanted within the power levels.
The only thing you need to do to make that more logically in there is like any answer for any question that came before has to fit with, like, you have to fit with that.
Yeah.
So like as soon as a question is answered, you just have to fit the next answer into what has come, everything that's come before. So you're constantly constraining the situation and the setting. Mm-hmm. But that is a viable way to do that. I mean, in fact, let's be honest. That's in fact how For the Queen is designed. Mm-hmm. Like, you answer a question, and then that is now a truth. Like, then the next question has to be another truth that follows in line with the previous truths.
And that's actually what happened, because we had one player create a very civilized dwarf, and somebody else was like, "Oh, what if dwarves were all like ravenous?" And I'm like, "No, we've already established that dwarves have this level of technology and civilization. You can't do that because this player's already established something."
No, they could have said then, like, well, what if there was an offshoot race of dwarves that were like exiled and they're ravenous and out in the countryside and they've gotten unruly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example of a way to use this for game design. So let's say we're playing a supers. I'm going to say supers, but this could just as easily be Magic or something. So playing a supers game, and I've picked a power energy blast, okay, and maybe as a fun exercise, like if I was designing this game, I might be like, cool, player, you've picked energy blast. Tell me one cool thing, one cool thing you can do with your energy blast. Like, oh, I can melt metal. And then, player to the left, tell me one of the bad side effects of this player's energy blast.
I mean, if everybody's down for that and that's the design of the game,
it's got to be a conceit of the game. It's got to be a thing that everybody buys into.
Yeah, because you're basically putting narrative positioning using leading questions.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a way that you could do that, right? Like where, somebody could define something, but we fall into that really thin ice place of defining stuff for people's characters. There are some people who are very comfortable letting other people define things for their characters, and there are people who are very uncomfortable with that. And a lot of that has to do with your philosophy of your character. Like, I tend to, drive my characters like I stole them. So I don't mind if somebody grafts something onto my character, as long as it doesn't kind of go against my general idea of what the character is. I'm cool. Like if, for little details, like I chew with my mouth open, right? Like, sure, I do. Great. it's a thing we can improve during the game. But if it annoys you and that's a thing we can play off and it's going to make something fun happen at the table, I'm cool describing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think, there is a game that does that where you describe something and the player to your left or something adds something to it. But I just
have a trick that I use for when I'm trying to, like, it's a quick trick to use when you're trying to, like, create connections to people, which I don't use anymore because most of the games that I play have that already. I'm like, look to the person to your left, how did you save them?
Yeah.
Look to the person to your, like, then I moved on, look to the person to your right, why do you stay with them?
Yeah. Yeah, those are great leading questions.
How did you save them? Why do you stay with them?
Yeah, it's establishing a bond in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So two quick things. One is there's a comment about some people don't like creating things for other people's players. I think, or other people's characters. I think the best way to deal with that is to turn to somebody and say to them, instead of "you do this," is "what if blah 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 blah," and let the player give you a yay or nay without having to immediately challenge you. If you just say, dwarves are all, uncivilized, that's bad. But what if there was a group of dwarves that were uncivilized? Gives the other person who created the truth in the first place a chance to actually build on it instead of having to contradict you.
What if is essentially a no but?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes...
Some nicer no but.
I mean, sometimes the thing I will do is like, okay, great, dwarves are like that. But Chris, how did your dwarf become so different? Right? Like, what was the no, that wasn't that was just my character misunderstanding stuff when I thought all halflings were great warriors.
That's true.
Which
they weren't.
Which was hilarious the first time he met other halflings.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, it's so many great warriors. By the way,
we shall all drink in the blood of the elves. Like, I think he gave a battle speech or something, and the elves or the dwarves
and the Kender were like, what is this person talking about? Halflings, that's right. Did I say Kender? Sorry.
Yeah.
The halflings were like, why is this person thinking we can fight? And there's just like women and children and farmers.
What happened to tell the gaming story was that in the Airy Peaks.
Not that women and children can't be that women can't be great fighters, but
they were civilians.
Yeah.
In the Airy Peaks, Corin had met 2 halflings. The only 2 halflings he'd ever met in his life. And both of them were fighters.
Yes.
And rather competent fighters.
Yes.
So Corin, who was a barbarian, who was not worldly, I don't think he was too dumb, but he was not very worldly. Just assumed that after meeting 2 halfling warriors, all halflings were great warriors.
To me, that's not very bright. I mean, if you're going to make an assumption that based on 2 people that you've met.
Corin came from a simple people. Anyway, so then when we left the Airy Peaks and we encountered these halfling traders that were going from town to town. When Corin sees them, he's like, "Oh, it is a mighty battle force," and he like goes up to them and like with great reverence, right. And he's like, "We shall," because he thinks they're on their way to go to the same battle they are. And he's like, "We shall drink in their blood," and he's putting his arm around them, and like they're all so like
confused. They're like, "You want to buy some bread?"
He's like, "Yes, we need to fill our bellies before we spill our enemies over the ground," and they were
the rest of the party was just shaking their head. So.
I think one last thing.
It was good times.
Sorry, I think Jerry is doing a good job of getting us back.
Yes, get us back on track.
I think it's also worth mentioning just once that when you're asking questions, and Danielle reminded me of this, that it's also important to know to ask the right questions to the right people. Mm-hmm. We have a player who will always go as weird as possible, and some players I've played with always have a soapbox to get up on, and will try to steer a campaign towards their particular soapbox every time you ask them a question. Mm-hmm. So those are the ones you sometimes have to ask
even more pointed
questions to keep them from going to.
I know some players like that.
They
drive me crazy.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly where pointed questions are for, right? Mm-hmm. So like if you know this is a problem, like you can't leave this question this open. Mm-hmm. So you just squeeze that plane down so they can't go, like if that's a thing, like if their soapbox is problematic. Right? Like, I sometimes... So I wrestle with this. I'll ask you guys. This is slightly off topic, but I wrestle with this. So, like, there's, like, some people who, like, they always play a ninja. Mm-hmm. Like, no matter what game they play, like, whatever the ninja is, that's what they play. And, like, some people will be, like... And certainly in my more militant youth, I would be like, I'm gonna fix this player. ban all ninjas, and make you play something else. But like as I've grown into like Game Daddy, right? Like I've become Game Daddy. Now I'm like, if you want to play ninja, like play the fucking ninja, man. Like it's fine. We'll figure out how it fits in this world.
Let's just
like,
find the ninja that fits in the situation.
Yeah, like let's find
setting.
right. Like what? So you want to be from like a secretive order that like uses stealth or whatever to fight? Come on, like that's fine.
Sounds like a rogue.
But I mean, my militant youth was like, I'm gonna fix this player, which I now am thinking, Game Daddy is like that's probably a bad idea.
The thing I think part of it is that there's a leading question in that alone, which is, what is it about playing a ninja that you like? How can we? And like you said, how can we fit that in? I'm talking less the player who always wants to play the ninja, and more the players who always want to, like everything. They want to bring transhumanism into any game they play, or the person who wants to always, beat up on religion or talk about witchcraft or whatever. It's always every game they're in. They're going to try to bring a worldview in that may not fit the game. You might have to ask certain questions to keep the game in the same universe everybody else is in.
Well, there's two ways to handle that person. The one way is like just be straight with them and like, look, this game isn't about that in any way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, like that's just not what we all decided to play.
Right.
I can't help you. I suppose you could choose not to play with us if you don't want to, if you're not gonna have a good time with it, or you can, conform to the thing, or let's figure out how we can fit this thing inside of the game that we were playing. Like, what is the thing that you really want? How can we move it around? How can we Game Daddy this thing out?
Yeah, I'm putting a trademark on that.
I like Game Daddy. That's good.
Game Daddy TM.
It's only more ridiculous because, we're friends and we know things.
I think it embraces my inner self.
Yeah, sure. I'm not denying that in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, I think that's exactly what it embraces.
Game Daddy.
Game Daddy.
Game Daddy.
Yep. Absolutely.
You can get a shirt that says "I'll be your Game Daddy."
That borders the consent area. I may just get one that says Game Daddy.
Sure.
It doesn't say I'm going to be yours because that assumes some sort of level of
it
force.
says, I'll be your Game Daddy if you want on the back.
Well, then I have to have like a whole thing if you want with consent. Blah blah blah. Like I just Game Daddy. Like I just like the college shirt from Animal House, like the block letters on that. Just Game Daddy.
I think Chris, this may have just answered your question of what's the best term for a game master.
No.
It's my preferred
because Daddy assumes that it is male.
You think that? That's not necessarily true.
Really? I feel like the
you
term,
say that. I know.
I feel like Daddy is generally
I have heard
male specific.
Nope. I have heard women dominants who have used that term. And I'm not saying it's super common.
Yeah, so I don't think it works really for...
how often
it works for me, though.
And how often do we hear people talk about a male aspected person being referred to as the group's mom or the game mom or whatever?
Never.
Oh, I hear it all the time.
I've never heard it once.
Game mom? Oh, I've heard.
Yeah, game.
Yeah,
not as GM, but usually game mom's the person who make sure that everybody ate.
Yeah, the generally expected the person who's the nurturing one in the group who's always making sure this person's their mom.
I mean, I get the intersectionality of these kind of terms and and that's probably not the right word to use anyway. The crossover of these terms, but in my experience, that is not a common thing.
Probably not.
and if it's not a common thing for me, and I'm as close to you folks as I am,
I'm taking it for myself. No one else has to use it. I'm not offering it to anyone else. I am the Game Daddy. Bag Daddy, Game Daddy. I think we see a trend here. Anyway, moving on. I don't know.
I feel like we can find a general neutral term for this. For some of this.
Andrew, like to state that she is not your Game Daddy.
Yeah, I saw that.
That is also fairly. That's also
fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I'm done with this conversation.
I think we're done with leading questions.
Yeah, I'm moving on. I don't even.
Chris,
I don't
what
even have
segment are we going to do next to get us to stop talking about this?
some segment. I'm getting there. I have to find it there. It's the social media depository, the conversation corner. That's what we call it, the conversation corner these days.
The conversation corner.
We're just gonna chat for a little while, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Yeah.
What's been going on, everybody? So, so I am watching the most ridiculous anime. I don't even know if it's good. I'm not even sure it's good.
Okay, what is it?
It's called Cannon Buster. Cannon Busters.
Okay, I'm gonna go look
It
this
is.
up.
It is on Netflix right now. It is a cyberpunk Wild West anime. and it's got some of the cooler Wild West cyberpunk mashup stuff I've ever seen. And by cyberpunk Wild West, I mean it's got some Wild West overtones, but it's way more cyberpunk. Like there's lots of bots, and there's not supposed to be magic because magic's supposed to be extinct, but there is some amount of magic in the world. But whenever magic shows up, it's devastating in some way, shape, or form. It is almost always the thing that has scale in the world.
I like it.
Is definitely magic. It's about this robot named Sam, who is a system something model. Like she's like a friendship robot, but she's also something else.
Samberry? Nope.
Is that?
I'm looking.
No, you're looking it up right now.
I thought I had it.
I think you would like this. I mean, this thing's got some issues, in my opinion. Like it's not Cowboy Bebop cool, though it wants to be. It's not Outlaw Star cool, though. And it's like Outlaw Star cool, but it's a little bit more grittier than that. It's definitely not. It's
more Trigun, maybe.
No, it wants to be Trigun if Trigun wasn't so hopeful. Trigun's a very hopeful. That guy.
No, I'm with you. I'm
just like super hopeful.
Right, but just taking the hopeful part out.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a revenge story going on there. Like the one maintenance bot's named Casey Turnbuckle. It's like a great name, and the two robots are just like ridiculously adorable and whatnot. But I don't know. The main character's main ability is that he resurrects when he gets killed. So he gets killed often. It's funny, but that's the only. And he's got a car that's like as big as a boat that can turn into a giant like mech. That's pretty cool. But it's good. There's like a crew of Ronin that are running around. Like that's obviously going off the 47 Ronin. I mean, the main character's name is Philly the Kid, so it's a rip on Billy the Kid.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some good family drama in the background going on with the bad guy and the Kingdom of Boudica. It's called Boudica. They've essentially eliminated all magic. Like I would go watch it. Give it a pilot +1. Like watch the first 2 episodes. See if you like it. If it's what you're into. If you like kind of ridiculous shonen anime type stuff, then it's right in the wheelhouse. It's not as crazy as Gurren Lagann or Kill la Kill. It's not quite that insane. That's not the right word. It's not quite that wild or wacky.
Bonkers would also be
bonkers.
Yes,
but it's up there. Like it's a little less than that.
High bonkerage.
High. I would call it medium high bonkerage.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So there's that. What about you, Phil?
I got to play another installment of The Quiet Year on my Sunday Story Games morning at Panera. Our little post-apocalyptic community is definitely having some issues as the youth have broken away from the old standard bearers, and robots have arrived, and like a lot of stuff's going on. But here's the thing I wanted to mention about it. It's like we're having a lot of fun with it. It's Bob, Glenn, and
Deb
then
and John O'Brien.
Deb and John, right? So, but here's the thing. This is the first time I brought colored pencils to the game. So I have these like color click pencils, and what's really neat is that kind of organically out of the game, we started coloring different factions and things in the community with different colors. So like our cyber pope stuff, like all of our stuff that has to do with our cyber religion is green, and the kids are purple, and the outsiders are blue. And so it's just neat, like when you look at the map, that not only are all the symbols scrawled on it, but the colors also add like another dimension of like, oh yeah, this thing on the map has something to do with the kids because it's in purple. So it's fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's a blast. Like Deb and John are great. I want to play like I got like a whole stack of story games. I'm just gonna keep bringing them to Panera if they keep showing up. Like that's my plan. Like Companion's Tale I think will be next because that's
nice.
another map drawing game.
It's good.
The only one I won't bring to Panera, which is one of my favorite story games, but I'm not putting it on the table at Panera, is Fall of Magic.
Yeah, Fall of Magic's beautiful.
Fall of Magic stays at my house.
Yeah.
Like on a table with no beverages. Like,
So I was talking about Cannon Busters before, right?
mm-hmm.
Cannon Busters is a High Plains Samurai anime.
Okay.
There you go.
That's the best way I can describe it. If you like High Plains Samurai, then you should go watch Cannon Busters.
I mean, we played High Plains Samurai.
Yep.
There is an argument about Cyberpope right now. So,
Oh, Cyberpope is...
True. Cyberpunk.
Cyberpope was a thing.
Jerry, what about you?
this Friday, Jen Adcock got together with Danielle and myself and our friend Sean Kenyon, and she's playtesting a game for somebody that's called Return to Animal Forest, and it's basically a reliving trauma game where you're playing an adult who goes back to a Winnie the Pooh-like forest to resolve issues in your life. And it's a card-based game. It's mostly storytelling. You separate the cards into 2 decks. One that's going to be, I think, like aces and hearts. The other one is clubs and diamonds. And on every turn, you have a sheet of paper with crayons. And every turn, you draw a biome of the area, so like waterfalls, and you describe an animal that's there. And then you take on the role of the adults now there, and somebody else at the table takes on the role of the animal. And then you draw cards, and one card talks about what the scene's going to be. You're having a picnic, you're running away from a strange monster, you've encountered a beehive, whatever. And the other card is, what's the trauma you're dealing with? And it can be things like, you know, your lover's been has been cheating on you, or bad day at work, or you got mugged and beat up today. And you go through the game until you draw the ace of spades. And so you keep creating more and more characters, so more and more animals can be part of the game. You can go back to revisit scenes if you want instead of... it's an interesting game. It's a good game, good mechanic. It needs a little bit of fine-tuning, which is why we're playtesting it. But it was a lot of fun, and kind of a few pieces kind of felt a little bit like One Child's Heart. Not quite as heavy, but that kind of heavy child to draw. We actually had to X-card a few of the traumas just because they weren't going to fit, what we wanted to talk about at the table. But it's a fun little game when it comes out, and I think they're looking at submitting it to Kate Bullock's anthology that she's putting together. It was a fun little game, and look forward to trying it again. So
Nice.
What else did I do? So on Saturday night, we went to Gathering Game, me and Jen and Bridget, and met up with some other folks, and we played Ex Libris, which is a library building game.
Oh, interesting.
So this game is fascinating. You are in a magical. You're trying to become the grand librarian for a magical library, and you have to build up a library. So it's a worker placement game. So Phil, you'll already like this.
Right, I'm with you.
You're trying to collect cards, which look like bookshelves, and they have anywhere between 2 and 4 books on them, of 6 different categories. And there's a bunch of ways to score points in it. And it depends on like what the favorite category is, what your secret category is, and then a few other things. But the neat thing about this game is that all the library bookshelves are in alphabetical and numerical order. So you actually have to build your library as if it was a legit library, like in alphabetical order.
Oh.
You can only build your shelves 3 high. Once you place a card, you can't really move it. There are some ways you can, but it's very difficult. So you actually have to plan out and place your cards in your library until you get it all set up the way that you want.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and then the game ends when, depending on the number of players, you have a certain number of cards in your library. Then there's one more turn. The interesting thing is that every round, 3 tiles come out that are 3 new places to go get books for your library. And at the end of the round, the tile that had the lowest number, they're all numbered 1 through like 18, goes into the permanent space. So there's like a permanent set that will eventually be out there that you can utilize every round as the game progresses. So there's 3 that rotate in, and then one of them stays for the rest of the game. Our game lasted not very long because there was a rummage sale space, and I won the rummage sale. There was like a gambling den space, and I won the gambling den space like 3 times in a row. So I got like 7 books, 7 cards real fast. But that game is really cool. I actually want to play it again.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And by the way, Mo, if you haven't played that yet, you should. It's from Renegade. It's good. I like it.
Nice.
What else you got, Phil?
I did some more Minecrafting. Jerry's doing some more Minecrafting.
Nice.
Yeah, had a good time. I've been playing a lot of Minecraft. I'm definitely in the late game stage of this pack, which isn't a problem. It just means that I'm not struggling for resources. I'm not struggling to generate power. Now I'm like interested in like what cool automations can I create? Like what cool objects can I create and how can I use them to like kind of steer the game? Like I'm at the point now where I'm at the point now where I can just flip a switch and make resources appear. So, which is good. Like I, built a bunch of stuff that kind of self-sustains and powers itself. And so, yeah, like I spent last night, I was like, I'm gonna redo my place. Like when I built a lot of this, I didn't have a lot of resources, so I kind of left things kind of spread out. And so I was like, I have plenty of resources. Let's move all this stuff together and make things more efficient. And late game is an interesting part. I haven't played a lot of late game Minecraft before, so it's a challenge to not race through all the mod packs, but like to kind of space them out. So I'm going to start getting into nuclear reactors soon.
Fun.
Like a few people pulled ahead of me on those. Like I thought I was going to go early on that, but actually like a few people went ahead of me. But I'm okay with that. I got cool stuff going on. So and Minecraft is still my main source of like decompressing. Like block therapy is still the thing. Like almost every day, I don't want to say almost every day, I'm playing like a few hours of Minecraft on the Mumble server. And again, hearts to Schmitty for keeping our server alive and keeping the Mumble going and all that stuff. And building a new server because the new server's coming, so that's even more exciting. But yeah, lots of Minecraft. Jer?
Minecraft has been amazingly supportive. That community is all about just helping each other. Somebody's working on a project and somebody else is like, oh yeah, I've got the resources for that, or let me come help you find that, or while I'm here, I'm doing this.
You were running low on potatoes last night.
I was running low on potatoes. I'm one of the newer players to the game, so I'm still dying on a regular basis and getting stuck in things, and people are just there. Captain Richard came on 3 nights ago. I was trying to build something, and he came and spent like an hour in my lair just walking me through the stages, not doing it for me, showing me how to do it and helping me do it myself. That there's a lot of that, let's help you as opposed to we're just going to do something for you kind of thing. And it means that no matter what you're doing, if you're just having a crappy day, you can go on Minecraft and that. In the Mumble server, there are people that are just on the Mumble server talking to us in the background, having chats, talking about. It's like live chat room.
Yeah, WereGator comes on a lot and is playing Civilization, but just jumps on the Mumble to sit and chat with everyone.
Schmitty talked to us yesterday while driving home. We had a little chat with him, just hanging out.
I jump in every once in a while.
Yes, you do.
The thing you were describing with Rich is what Schmitty did for me when I started. Like everything I learned about applied energistics and Ender.io was because Schmitty kind of basically took me in and mentored me on how those 2 mod packs worked.
And it's fun to visit everybody's place because everybody's doing different things. Richard's trying to build bigger, better machines. Tony is trying to apparently mine the world.
Because Tony is a mad scientist.
Savannah's building gigantic kaiju snowmen and fish tanks and all that, and a giant multicolored bounce house with beds and food in it, so you can go in there and relax and bounce around for no reason. And it's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of fun.
I've got blocks.
So. I love our Minecraft community. I mean,
it's amazing.
Mike D's on there, Brandon's on there. I mean, we get depending on what time of the day you go on to play, different people are around. Like I'm the late crew. Like if I'm on, we're gonna be up late.
We're gonna go long.
Yeah, we're gonna go long. I'm definitely the guy who like brings like I'm the one who closes out the night.
Just sticking to your brand, huh?
Well, you know me, I don't like sleeping.
All right. Well, let's move on to the Patreon shoutouts.
Sure, let's do it.
That's enough. That's enough.
Yeah, that's enough chit chat.
We can chit chat more in the after show.
After show.
Patrons, by the way, get the after show every week, so you can hear another 10 to 25 minutes worth of content. All right, plus a bunch of other things. Let's do some Patreon shoutouts. Noah Bond, Austin Lemke, Chris Foster. That's Best Chris, right?
That is Best Chris.
Yeah, that's right. I said it. Best Chris, not me. Dan Simmons, David Walker, Donahue McCarthy, Drew Smith, the secret weapon of the show, Evil Richard, Glenn Seiler, Jason Pitt, Jean Lorbert, Jeff Stevens, Jim Morrison, John Just John, MT Black, Matthew Pezzarelli, Nate Brooms, Robert Aducci, Robert Dave, Robert Dorgan, and Ryan Bolter.
There's a lot of Roberts
That's
lined up
We
there.
have a lot of Roberts.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, so much for listening.
Yeah, if you're free Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time. By the way, really quick, if you want to go harass CenturyLink because Senda still doesn't have internet, feel free to grab Senda's tweet and blast CenturyLink for leaving her disconnected
For 6 days.
for 6 days. Like, feel free to just rail on CenturyLink. I did.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, anyway.
Do it.
That's 6 p.m. the Queen's time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Come join us live on Twitch where you can chat with the other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
You know, if you can't make it to the live show, you should check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcast. You should all take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bones and Obsidian, Pandas Talking Games, The Gnomecast, Zhang Yu Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, The Tabletop Bellhop, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
Yes, indeed. I wanted to make a leading question, but I can't do it right now. After you have...
Phil, you could...
tell me the interesting question you're going to ask after you listen to the show.
Yes, and leave us some feedback.
Yes. You can reach us on the old-fashioned emails directly at mmp@misdirectedmark.com.
Mm-hmm.
Check out our awesome Facebook group.
With the finger guns and everything.
Yeah, there we go. Hit us up on Twitter. The show in the network is at MisdirectedMark. He is GM Gerrymander. He is the Light 101. And I am DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here or other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Jenghu Hustle is at patreon.com/Jenghu Hustle. And certainly, last but not least, Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP, Down with D&D, and Pandas Talking Games.
Hey, Misdirected Mark, Word Scramble!
Get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, and the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, as well as other special releases.
Well, now that we got the Misdirected Mark Word Scramble in there, I feel confident saying that this has been a Misdirected Mark production with technical difficulties and anything, which is also the media arm of Encoded Designs. A mic drop.
We out.